So first I had to describe the monetary system today in a new way. Here you have yourself and all other actors in the society. And here you have your balance sheet. All of us have a balance sheet. To the left you have the value of your assets, and to the right the value of your liabilities. If you remove the value for liabilities from the assets, you have your equity. Same for your people, same for every other company. Then you have, in the asset side, you have the physical cash, and you also have your bank money, of course. And the bank money is also located on the liability side of the banks. So this green arrow represents bank money. It's located in two places at the same time. And if you continue, how do banks store their money? Because they have another sort of money. Oh, first, all people in the society have the same kind of bank money, and there are one monetary circuit out there. Most of the money, every money, bank money that we use is this kind of money. But the banks cannot use this. They have another kind of money, central bank money, which is in the same way is located on the liability side of the Riksbank. And regarding the concepts, I will use the name of a central bank, I will tell Riksbank, and the name of a digital cash, I will call E-krona. After all, we are in Sweden now. So that's the monetary system of today. And then also, this Riksbank has a certain system called Riks, where they handle all the payments between banks and themselves. And also, important thing, there is main tool to control this system is the policy rate. That's the policy rate, the interest rate on the central bank money. Currently in Sweden, minus 0.25%. This is the system of today. Then I describe in this system how the E-kronas look like, how they work. This is the same as before. Now it's created in E-kronas here. You have that the E-kronas will be an asset in your asset side in the same way as bank money, but they are located as a liability directly at the Riksbank. And in between, there are somebody handling the transaction account, accounting for this. And that could normally be a bank or another financial institution. So this is the E-kronas. And then you still have two monetary circuits here. But note that now we have a fourth version of the Swedish krona, the E-krona. But payments, how are they done? Well, the E-krona will have 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, immediate payments. And the bank money, you have 3 hours up to 3 days for the money to reach. I know we have Swedish, but that's a kind of a trick or support that's supported by the Riksbank to make it that possible. But if you move money within a bank, it's 24/7. So you can move money a number of times during the day, and you get no interest for the money that you have during the day. Just overnight, you get an interest. And the same goes for in the Riks area. Here we are also interest. This immediate payment within working hours and interest overnight. So, we're talking about interest. Could you have any, what interest would be in the E-kronas? Well, the E-kronas, should it be over the midnight that you count the interest? In that case, I can have my money in Finland, get the interest, and then in Sweden get it once more, 1 hour later. It doesn't make sense. So I completely agree with Joseph. The real thing, and Mr. Alaeus, the real thing is that E-kronas should be means of payment without interest. So if the E-kronas are without interest, what will happen if you move money in between here? Well, first, if you have a policy rate of minus 0.25%, and then you have cash with no interest, this means that the floor for policy rates really is roughly around minus 1%. You can't have much more, because then people are just using cash instead. So there is a floor already for the policy rate. And if you introduce a no-interest E-krona, you will have a policy rate floor at 0% instead. So my view is that if the floor is 0 instead of minus 1, no big deal. You can't, it doesn't matter really. It's just 1% difference. So a new tool is needed in the low end to get to make Riksbank to have a tool to handle the low-end inflation. That is, Riksbank emits new money directly. And how do you do that in the most efficient way? Well, citizen dividend, where money is directly inserted into the balance sheet of the individuals, the citizens of the country. And not much is needed, I guess. My view is that around 200 SEK, 20 euros a month, until 2% inflation. And the Riksbank will, of course, inflation is measured each month. So Riksbank can change this amount each month and keep this. This is really kind of a simple closed loop where you can adjust the money to get the inflation at 2% in the low end. So, but then what happens if you have money now transferred bank money to E-krona account? What happens? What's the workings around that? Well, you move money, your bank money to the E-kronas, and then the liability from the bank will move to the Riksbank. So the bank will get rid of a liability. That was not, if they come away with that, was not be good. So they have to move the same value on the asset side to the Riksbank. And if they have low liabilities, low level of liquidity, they have to sell an asset. They sell the asset, and they get money for it. And when they pay that money to the Riksbank, it disappears. It's just a credit. So what happens in this case is that the balance sheet of the banks will shrink. And this is really not good. Because if they sell assets to pay Riksbank, what happens is that there will be less money around. There will be lower inflation and financial instability. So how do we handle that? Well, there is another way, a stable way to do this, that I will propose here. Same way we start with moving money to the E-kronas, you move the liability to the Riksbank, and you shall move the value here. So instead of selling assets, Riksbank can provide an e-conversion credit that replaces the lost bank money. And to do that in a completely stable way, in this way first, what will happen is as the balance sheet of the Riksbank will expand. So the risk will be taken over by the Riksbank. And at the same time, we have to, for the banks, so the banks will have the same balance sheet, same size of balance sheet. And the interest on this e-conversion credit will need to be the same as for deposits in general for the banking system in Sweden, which means that the profit level of the banks will be the same also. And regarding the stability, this has to be provided with new security. This means that the system, the banks will be, according to the stability rules, liquidity rules, will have the same stability. And this is a little strange because bank money, deposits, are in liquidity rules considered very stable. So to replace them, there also need to be no security for this e-conversion loan. So if this kind of e-conversion credit replaces bank money, you will get financial stability and no impact in inflation. So in a boom, an E-kronas will not make any difference. In a regression, E-kronas together with e-conversion credit and citizen dividend will safeguard the monetary system. So why is there a need for banking guarantees? Let's explore what happens if they are removed. But first I will say that what will happen, as I already mentioned, that the banks will raise interest rates and few E-kronas will stay overnight. So there will be little use of E-kronas. So if we have these banking guarantees, what happens if we remove them? Well, if we have removed them, we are not guaranteed anything for banks. They have to also be able to use bank money, use E-kronas. So all central bank money will be E-kronas. They will transform to E-kronas. And there will be the same money circle. So the banks will use the same kind of money that the rest of us. This is an overnight transformation, of course. It includes changes of the laws. But I claim it's still stable. Financial system is still stable. But the policy rate actually disappears. There are no central bank money. So, of course, there are no policy rate, yes. So the bank money, what happens with that? I claim that they will now have 0% because they will not be profitable. They cannot compete with E-kronas because when the relegation is changed to all bank support are removed, deposit guarantee lender, everything is changed. Well, before transformation, according to liquidity regulation, bank money was considered very stable. They were equally stable as very long-term borrowing. So bank money deposits made it possible for banks to lend more, and thus it was profitable to provide interest. But after the transformation, deposits are not considered stable anymore, and the banks cannot provide interest, since they are not profitable anymore. So I claim that bank money will not be able to compete with E-kronas, and they will flow gradually over. Maybe this is the tidal flow you talk about, Joseph. So, actually, a full sovereign money has been installed in this overnight transformation. But what happens with this e-conversion credit? Well, Riksbank will now raise this interest a little every day, and kind of a micro% every day. What will happen then, as the banks, they will choose gradually to sell assets and pay back. And where they pay back, their balance sheet will shrink a little, very little each day. And the Riksbank's balance sheet will also shrink a little every day. And the money will disappear, and citizen dividend will keep inflation at 2% all the way. And this means that asset values, debt levels, and stock of money will shrink, of course. And this is very serious. If you do this in 1 year, we call it a crisis. That's why we need to do it over kind of 30 years. And doing it over 30 years, it will be under full control of the Riksbank all the way. Can steer this. So we will have a stable financial system all the way. The finance system will work in the same way. And after 30 years, there will be no e-conversion credit. It will be paid back. But what happens with debts and time deposits? I haven't shown anything about that. Well, debts are still there between the banks and us people. And the time deposits are still there. During all these 30+ years, everything this works in the same way. So actually, it's no change at all, except that banks do not create money anymore. Thank you.